Hi there, and welcome to episode 2 of Seeing Red Podcast. We're just going to be going over UFC 284, which just happened last night here. Islam Makhachev defending his belt against Alexander Volkanovski here. You also had Josh Emmet versus Yair Rodriguez fighting for the interim belt to see who is next in line for Volkanovski. Also had Jack Della Maddalena fighting Randy Brown. Also, a couple other good fights on that pay-per-view. You had Parker Porter versus Justin Tafa, and to open up the card, you also had Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menafield. So, night of great fights here. Let's dive right into it. Starting off with the main event. Wow, guys. If you ended up watching last night's fights, that was a crazy showing by both athletes there. That was a crazy amount of talent, crazy amount of execution that they were able to do there. But in the end, Islam Makhachev does defend his lightweight crown with a unanimous decision, which I don't really agree with all that much. But just kind of give you an idea here, the scorecards, Ben Cartridge had it 48-47. David Lethaby, if you pronounce that, sorry David, 48-47. And this scorecard does upset me a little bit. This one I did not agree with whatsoever. 49-46 for Derek clearly. So Derek had it 4-1 Islam at the end of that fight. Let's jump right into it. So me personally, if you watch that fight, I watched at my buddy's house. We had 5 other of our friends there. Every single one of us at the end of the fight. We've all been watching fights for years, so we're not just complete casuals. We know how to judge a fight card. We know how to judge a championship fight, especially 5 rounds. I had it 3-2 for Volk. I thought Volk won the first, the third, and the fifth, because the second and the fourth are the 2 rounds where Makhachev had Volkanovski's back, and they were kind of just stuck in that position for most of the round when that did happen. But 49-46, to me, that's crazy. I mean, I'll just grab my coffee real quick, but to me, that's insane. I mean, 49-46, the judges were not great last night. I mean, all the fights that went to a decision, like even Jamie Malarkey versus Belden, or Blinden, however you pronounce it. Apologies if I mispronounced it there. But I thought going into that one, that was a close fight. I mean, not as bad as an example, but I thought that was Malarkey. I thought Malarkey won that fight there. But at the same time, though, the opening fight of this whole card on the very first early prelim, Tukhugov versus Elvis Brenier. If you watch the very first fight, like if you're a fan like me and you watch every single fight on a pay-per-view, starting from the earliest prelims all the way up to the main event, nonstop the entire thing, you just watch that fight and you obviously saw Tukhugov won that fight, but somehow lost a 30-27 on all 3 judges' scorecards there, which I don't understand. I don't understand how they got that one so wrong. And as soon as that number got announced, I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to be in for a long night, boys, because that's a horrible, horrible scorecard. Nonetheless, though, I mean, good for Elvis. UFC debut, beats a very respectable opponent in Tukhugov, but sucks for Tukhugov because he's coming up to lightweight, missed weight by 1.5 pounds there, and ends up losing a fight I thought he won. But nonetheless, back to the main event, though. Volkanovski outstruck Makhachev 70 punches to 70 significant strikes to 57. Now that's 70 out of 143 strikes to 57 out of 95. So you obviously had Volk outstriking Islam and tagging him a lot more and actually hurting Islam. Like in the 5th round, if you remember, Islam may have been going in for a takedown, but Volkanovski cracked him on his way in and was able to wobble him enough to where he got on top and was able to finish the round on top in ground and pound in the guard of Makhachev there. So it'd be a crazy rematch. I know that. But at the end of the day, Makhachev still retains his belt regardless of how you viewed the fight there. I mean, Obviously, judging is a lot harder than it looks like there. It's a lot harder to judge a fight. Probably when you're sitting cage side, you don't get to see all the same things that we do as fans watching it from home on the TV, which is honestly why I've heard many people talk about this. Rogan, I believe, has said this as well too. Why don't we give them a little monitor in front of the cage that they can watch the fight from, so they can get better angles and stuff like that, so they're not watching it with their eyes? Because I've been to UFC fights before, whether if I'm close mid-level or if I'm up in the nosebleeds. If they're in a certain spot of the cage, you can't see everything that's going on. The pillars in between the cage, the padded pillars, they usually say like Prime Hydration now or Cocaine Bear, which I thought was the best sponsor I've ever seen. But nonetheless, you don't get a good idea of what's actually happening if you are sitting cage side, contrary to popular belief, because I know like you would think, oh, you're sitting right there cage side, you probably have the best view. Yes and no. I mean, there's certain things you miss watching it cage side than you do watching it from your couch on TV. That overhead view of the camera guys who are maybe like 4 or 5 feet away, that's where they should be watching the fights at. They should be up in like a suite watching it on a little monitor, judging it that way, not cage side right there where they might miss some things. But who am I? I'm just a guy that's trying to start a podcast here about MMA, so my opinion doesn't really have any merit, but that's just me. But end of the day though, Volkanovski loses his title shot there, but you already know who's next in line for Volkanovski when he jumps back down to featherweight, and Yair Rodriguez. Man, going into that fight with Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett, I honestly thought Josh Emmett had a very good chance of winning. If you watched the last episode, I thought Josh Emmett might be able to use the Frankie method, where you take him down, pound him out, kind of hold him and secure him there. But no, it looks like Yair has learned from that fight there, because, man, he was piecing him up on the feet left and right. Fucking flying knees, body kicks, hurt him super bad with the body kick in that first round. So that was tough. Because you watched Emmet, as soon as he got hit with that body kick, elbow down to cover up that liver. So he was hurt. You could definitely tell he was hurt there. But in the second round, you start to see, or actually, first off, in that same round where he gets hit with that body kick, Emmet does catch. Yair, thank you. Does catch Yair with a overhand right and does kind of sting him a little bit. Doesn't necessarily wobble him, but he let Yair know, hey, man, I still got bombs for hands, so mind your P's and Q's. But at the end of the day, though, second round, Josh Emmett gets the takedown, and Yair's on his back, and Yair snatches up a triangle super fast. And I mean, when you're a long, lengthy guy like that as well, too, those are the submissions that are most going to benefit you there, because you have more angles, you have better leverage because of how tall and lengthy you are. But in this case, I mean, if you bet for Yair to win by submission, your odds were probably pretty heavy. You're probably looking at plus with a couple zeros behind that as well. But I know Ben Askren posted on Twitter, he predicted that he would win via submission, but in the fourth round. But still, to kind of predict submission for Yair, who kind of saw that coming? I definitely didn't. So respect to Yair. He's the second-born Mexican champion in the UFC, regardless of undisputed or interim belt there. He's still technically a champion there, right behind Brandon Moreno. I know people think, well, what about Cain Velasquez? It was, yes, Hispanic, wasn't born and raised in Mexico, though. Excuse me. Tasty. Anyways, but that's going to be a great fight, too. If you kind of look at that style matchup between Yair and Volkanovski, I mean, you're going from, I mean, imagine the opponent change on that. Going from a guy who's known for his wrestling and his submissions, Makhachev, going into a guy who's known for his taekwondo, who has multiple KOs doing some crazy shit, like the Andre Fili fight, jumping scissor kick, knocked him out on impact. But the Korean Zombie fight, losing all 5 rounds, 10 seconds left, here's the clapper, Zombie rushes him, and he's able just to duck and throw that elbow and catch him with that. I mean, When have we ever seen that before or since? He's the only person to land an elbow like that, and he won that fight. I mean, he was losing, but he won that fight. But also, I mean, styles make fights as well, which is why Yair versus Volkanovski is so intriguing. I mean, I hate to give a prediction right now just because after watching Volkanovski do what he did against Makhachev and arguably winning the fight, I mean, I kind of have to go with my boy Volk. But at the same time, though, what an intriguing style matchup. I mean, both of those guys are at the top of their game right now. I know that every single interim champion at featherweight, Connor, Aldo, Holloway, has become the undisputed champion. So we'll have to see if they kind of keep the ball rolling in that regards with Yair. But, I mean, you're looking at the toughest test in Volkanovski to kind of get that job done. But that's the main event with Volkanovski and Makhachev kind of breakdown, and then also with Yair and Josh Emmett. But to get to the feature fight, man, was I right. Maybe in the wrong way, but I was right. Jack Della Maddalena. Wow, that boy can box, man. He clipped Randy Brown with that nice right hand, made Randy kind of face plant almost, and then jumped right on top of him. And now, as soon as I saw him jump right on top of Randy, I was like, oh, cool, sweet. Ground and pound finish, awesome. No, he kind of showed a new wrinkle to his game where he hopped on the back and was able to secure the rear naked and get the tap. I was not expecting that either, but honestly, I mean, it's one of those things where, was Randy tapping because he was actually being choked, or was it a combination of still being rocked from that shot while being choked as well too, where he just discombobulated and he's like, get off me. I mean, either way, Jack is a monster. That dude is a problem for the division, and I am so excited that we have a prospect in that division that's able to throw hands like that. I mean, even in the post-fight show, he did an interview with Brett Okamoto. He called out Shavkat Rakhmonov. Ain't nobody calling that dude out. I mean, he's fighting Jeff Neal on the John Jones versus Cyril Gane card, but nobody calls out Rakhmonov. That dude's scary. And the fact that he was like, oh, I want to test myself. I like being scared a little bit. I like to get my blood boiling. I like to feel like, ooh, this is a challenge. And I'm thinking Shavkat. As soon as he said Shavkat, I mean, I was watching Anthony, like, I know Anthony Smith was on TV, but me and Anthony Smith both kind of were like, you sure about that? But, man, if he can get past Shavkat, if Shavkat tries to wrestle him as well, too, and he's able to defend the takedowns, he's able to kind of fend for himself in the grappling, and if he beats Shavkat, regardless of the method, KO, submission, decision, who cares? If he beats Shavkat, huge. Ugh, that was gross, sorry. That was a huge feather in his cap, man. I mean, man, that's crazy. I mean, the balls you gotta have to call out a guy at that caliber that everybody in the division's scared of. I mean, they're all fighters, not scared of, but I mean, they're all going for the title. I mean, if you can take another fight that's maybe a little bit better for your style to match up with than one guy, I mean, you're going to take the one that kind of favors you, unless you're like Chimaev, but I mean, Chimaev just ragdolls everybody. But regardless, I mean, that's a pretty bold statement to say you want Shavkat. I mean, I respect to Jack for calling him out, but yeah, I know that the aforementioned last three fights that I mentioned, Jack, Yair, and then Volkanovski and Islam, all got performance bonuses. I mean, we can all obviously know who won fight of the night. That was Islam and Volkanovski, obviously. So each one of those guys gets $50,000. Yair's performance of the night. I really wish they would bring back submission, knockout, fight of the night. Just so, like, I know we get it performance of the night there, but, I mean, I remember the old days just hearing knockout of the night winner. Stuff like that. I don't know. It's got old school kind of vibe that I miss. But, yeah, those guys definitely deserve it. But the fight right before Jack, Justin Tafa versus Parker Porter. Man, is Justin Tafa related to Mark Hunt at all? Because it seems like it's the same person. Like, they both got the one-punch KO power, and they both walk-off KO. When he hit Parker while going backwards with that left hand and then the right hook, and he just stood over him, looking down on Parker while he was sitting there doing the Brendan Schaub. Sorry, Brendan, love you. But he was kind of like in outer space for a second there, and he just stood over him and looked at the ref, and then kind of looked back down. and then kind of looked back at the ref. I was like, damn, this guy can bang. He's got some power. And I mean, kind of wish he got a performance bonus, to be honest there, but that was a crazy knockout. I mean, what more could you want from a heavyweight unranked fight there? I mean, if it's not going to be a first round KO, I mean, we all kind of know what usually happens. It's usually kind of a drag them out. It's not necessarily, I don't want to say slop fest, because I mean, these guys are professional athletes and they're at the top of their game because they're in the UFC. But at the same time, though, I mean, usually when heavyweights don't get the knockout, it tends to be a little bit slower pace of a fight once you get into the later rounds, late second, third round, things like that. So I was happy to see that fight ended quickly. I mean, sucks that Parker Porter got KO'd, but hey, I mean, somebody's got to lose. Then the fight before that one, Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menafield. I mean, what a barn burner that was. You got Jimmy Crute getting rocked at the end of the first round there, and then still losing the second round, in my opinion, and comes back in the third and arguably wins that round. But here's the caveat. Alonzo Menafield grabs the fence in the third round and prevents a takedown from being performed, and Mark Goddard, being the veteran referee that he is, immediately takes a point away, which I was 100% on board with. I mean, if you grab the fence and it prevents a takedown, yes, you should get a point taken away because you just changed the trajectory of the fight. You grab the fence and the guy doesn't take you down, and that caused it, and then you get back up to your feet and you knock that guy out that was trying to get the takedown after you just grabbed the fence. I mean, you just changed the whole trajectory, because if you didn't grab that fence, who knows? You might have been able to suck your hips out from underneath you, get you on the ground and pound you out or submit you. But that fight, due to the point deduction, did end in a majority draw, though. So if you had Jimmy Crute or Alonzo Menafield on your parlay, I mean, luckily it didn't ruin your parlay there, but at least you got a void on it. I know most, like I use DraftKings, FanDuel. That's usually what happens with me. If I get a draw, it just voids. But I mean, it kind of sucks for Jimmy Crute, man. I know he's coming off a couple of bad losses there between, I don't know which one came first or vice versa, but I know he fought Jamal Hill, Anthony Smith, had that really weird drop foot thing with Anthony Smith there where he got kicked in the leg and his leg just kind of went dead for a bit. I mean, nobody wants to go through that. I mean, Michael Chandler's gone through that. Cejudo's gone through that. So that's definitely not something you want something to happen to you, but it is what it is. It's fighting. But I know it's been a long layoff for him, so this is his first fight back, and he starts getting mollywopped by a guy that's got bat wings for lats back there. I mean, Alonzo Menafield's a big guy and obviously hits hard. Fight before this one knocks out Misha Serkinov with a straight left and finishes off with hammer fist there. So, I mean, tough decision for both the guys there, but more so for Jimmy because, I mean, who knows? If he didn't do anything with that takedown, just rode to a decision, he probably would have lost the decision there. Or who knows? Might have gotten the submission or was able to pound him out and get the finish there. Well, the world may never know. But also, I mean, Alonzo Menafield, kudos for you for putting on a great performance in those first couple rounds. But, man, fence grab just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth there. So I'll wash it down with a sip of coffee real quick. Delicious. But yeah, it was a great night of fights as well too. I mean, one fight that I did want to highlight on the prelims there, I'm going to butcher this name, absolutely butcher it, but Lume Lukabumi, if that's not how you pronounce it, I apologize. But man, I know she's a Thai fighter. She's been fighting in Muay Thai since she was like 7 years old there, and they're not known for their ground game. But wow, second round comes out there, gets the back, dumps her down there, gets on top, chokes her out. I mean, if you had that on your parlay for Luque to Lume, you know what I'm trying to say. If you had her on your parlay to win by submission, man, raking in the dough. But if you had her on your parlay to win by a second round submission there, we go into Sizzler. At the same time, yeah, that was a really impressive performance there as well too. Was not expecting that to happen. I know we talked about Tukagov. We also Another one, Jack Jenkins made his debut tonight after the Contender Series. Looked great out there. I mean, chopping the legs there. They kind of had like a leg kick war going back for a second there. His body work looked really well too. Was able to kind of put the combinations together, like jab, right hand, left hook, leg kick. Like, really, really good boxing. We didn't get to see much of that in his Dana White Contender Series fight because it was mostly just on the ground. I mean, but the guy he did fight did come to fight. So, I mean, kudos to both those guys for putting on both very good performances. But end of the day here, man, Volkanovski won that fight. I hate to keep harping on it. I hate to keep bringing it up and just being salty, honestly, because we were all standing around my buddy's TV in a line watching it going, all right, we're ready to watch the belt get put on Volkanovski. Let's go. Nope. Makhachev, unanimous decision, which, I mean, I would have been fine with the decision if you said split. I would have been like, yeah, I mean, close fight. But unanimous, man? Come on, man. Volkanovski's the GOAT. I mean, I still have him as my number one pound for pound, even though he lost that fight. Still number one in my book here, but, geez. So depressing. But Volkanovski, being the competitor he is, the champion that he is, was humble in defeat. I mean, he said he thought he won the fight as well, too. So, I mean, kudos to him for being the humble athlete that we know him to be. But, man, at the same time, though, would have been nice. Would have been nice to see Volk get that double champ. Because look at all the good matchups for Volk, especially with that performance. Volkanovski versus Beneil. Volkanovski versus Charles. Dustin. Gaethje. Fiziev. All those matchups are fantastic at lightweight for Volk. I think his style matches up extremely well with the top echelon of lightweight fighters there. I mean, you got Conor versus Chandler happening there. I mean, I personally think Chandler is probably going to win if he doesn't come in there fighting low IQ like he has been. I mean, he is the most entertaining fighter on the roster, but at the same time, though, man, hey, do you want to get the title shot? Do you want a belt? Or do you want to be known as the most entertaining fighter ever? I mean, there's fans and there's money. And we all know that there's a lot more money that comes from being the champion than there does just from being the most entertaining fighter. I mean, you got specific contracts and whatnot, but, I mean, nothing beats having that gold belt around your waist there. So, I mean, imagine if Chandler goes in there and smokes Conor. You could see him getting a title shot. And if Volkanovski would have won, you could have had Chandler versus Volkanovski. Or Volkanovski wins last night, Conor wins against Chandler. They've already said that if Conor wins against Chandler, more than likely he probably would have gotten the next title shot. So, I mean, that's a historic fight on its own. I mean, who doesn't want that Conor payday? I mean, everybody wants a red panty night. I don't blame them, but it's all right. We still got very, very, very high-level guys in every single division there. I mean, Yair and Volkanovski, that's going to be a fantastic fight. I cannot wait for that one. Don't know if it'll be this year or maybe early next year. Doesn't look like either of them really took too much damage, so who knows? I mean, it's only February right now, so International Fight Week? Maybe. That might be pushing a little too soon, but one thing I do want to say, though, Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush, if that is happening in May, and if Beneil Dariush does get past Charles Oliveira, we are going to riot if he doesn't get a title shot against Makhachev. Beneil Dariush has been silently murking this division for how long now? He's on an 8-fight win streak. Give this man his flowers. Give him a title shot already. Like, he deserves it, obviously. The man's put in the work. He's beaten all the right guys. He just beat an undefeated guy in the UFC with Gamrot. I mean, and decisively beat him, too. It wasn't like it was a close fight either. Like, he decisively beat that guy. I mean, I know that the Charles and Beneil were supposed to fight before, and it kind of just fell through. But, man, could you imagine Charles getting the rematch against Makhachev if he beats Beneil, which I don't think it will happen because of just how easily Makhachev did beat Charles there. I don't want to say easily, but made it look pretty easy. And that's hard to do against a guy like Charles there, especially on the ground like that. But man, Beneil is sneaky, dude. That's the dark horse of the division. That guy, man, he's so good. He's so well-rounded in everything. His ground game is so good. That's the fight we need to see there. I mean, I will not stop saying Beneil Dariush's name to get a title shot until he does, if he beats Charles Oliveira. I mean, at the end of the day, it was a great night of fights there. I mean, what a card to be in Perth. What a main event to have there as well, too. The crowd seemed, obviously Australian crowds. I mean, for some reason, there's just something with out of state, for me, out of state crowds there. I mean, I've been to fights in Vegas, here in Arizona. I would love to go to a fight night in London, Australia, Brazil. Those crowds seem wild. So it was a great night of fights. I'm interested to see what the pay-per-view buys look like on this one as well too. But if I'll leave you with this, I don't think we have a number 1 pound for pound and number 2 pound for pound. I don't think it should be numbers. I think you got 1A and 1B. Because that was such a close fight to where I don't think you can separate them by 1 and 2. That's how even that fight was. And I still believe Volkanovski won. Who knows? I might change my tune once it drops on ESPN and I'm able to rewatch it again and really kind of zone in, pay attention. I mean, I paid attention to it last night. Obviously, I was doing live scoring, but you know what I mean. I mean, usually you get a better opinion once you've actually watched the entire thing in full, alone, just the fight on, just zoned in watching it. Who knows? I mean, I've watched fights with the TV on mute before just to kind of get a feel of who I think won. But just watching it, 3-2 Volk. Can't really change my mind right now. Those scorecards are insane. 49-46 Derek Clearly for Islam. That's nuts. He outstruck him on the feet. I know that Islam did get 6 out of 8 takedowns attempts. So, I mean, but going into the fight, you knew he was going to get at least a couple takedowns there. And they weren't crazy takedowns where he's grabbing him, shucking him in the air and everything like that. But regardless, amazing night of fights here. I'm going to be going on vacation to Hawaii here. I leave tomorrow morning. I know that Saturday, a week from tomorrow or yesterday, is going to be Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. I'll probably be running around in Hawaii there, so I don't know if I'll have time to kind of do a video on that card there and see what I think's going to happen. But kudos to Jessica Andrade for stepping up on short notice and fighting Erin Blanchfield there, number 3 versus number 10. So, I mean, she's definitely not fighting up, but, I mean, kudos to also Erin Blanchfield, though. I mean, Jessica Andrade is a scary lady. I mean, nobody wants to fight her. Look what she did to Lauren Murphy. She beat the brakes off that woman. So, I mean, kudos to both of those women. I think it's going to be a great fight as well, too. Other than that, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to follow me on Twitter as well, too, to know when a new video drops and things like that, or you want to hit that notification button on the YouTube page, you can follow me on Twitter at Seeing Red MMA. That's on Twitter at Seeing Red MMA. This is episode 2, so we're still kind of working out the kinks and things like that. So we'll see how this keeps going there. My buddy made me a new logo there, so you might see that on the page as well. Really good artwork. His name's Hayden, so shout out Hayden. Thank you for the dope logo and artwork as well too. But that's all for today. So until next time, have a good one.